So, this is interesting, Danica said with a slight smile on her lips as she stepped through the old rusted door of this long-abandoned factory, making sure her phone captured the true size of the building. She could feel her heart starting to beat quicker, the rush of adrenaline, and also a slight twinge of fear. Urban exploring, people called it. Trespassing, according to the law. She smirked, then sneezed as some dust hit her nostrils. The building had been a factory 100 years ago. Abandoned for decades, it still stood here, forgotten by whoever owned this piece of land. Now, the only thing it produced were rats, and maybe a few new diseases, one would imagine, looking at the sharp metal edges jutting out from the beams and walls. What had been its purpose? Danica didn't know and didn't want to either. It was better as a mystery. Exploring an old abandoned factory was more fun the less one knew about it. She pushed inside and let the old rusted door fall shut behind her, cutting off the only source of bright light. Danica stopped for a second and turned around. This place was breathtaking. It was everything she would have ever wanted to explore. High ceilings, rusted metal, and even some parts of old machinery were still lying around. It reminded her of a set for a post-apocalyptic movie, with stairs in the background, reddish-brown from rust, leading up to a metal platform that looked like it would break loose at any moment. The ceiling was insanely high, even for modern standards, and the only natural source of light was coming from the dirt-caked windows. This place felt creepy and strange, just like she liked it. Danica walked another step, put the sleeve of her jacket in front of her mouth and nose, then took a few snapshots with her phone. The flakes of dust now rising into the air looked almost mesmerizing. It was like a ballet without music, and Danica watched them as they danced there. She could have gone down the route of many others who enjoyed this hobby and taken up photography, but that just wasn't her. Neither did she care about stuff like the composition of a picture, nor did she feel any kind of need to share her experiences with other people. Those hours she spent in abandoned buildings were hers and hers alone. The pictures she took were for only her to look at when she was back in the office to lighten her mood. If only she had been born 500 years earlier, she could have been an explorer. No, she chided herself. That was stupid. She wouldn't have gotten the chance back then. Hardly anyone ever had. And those who did were rich or well-connected men. It was better like this. Well, except for her work, that was. If she could spend her life walking around the globe looking at abandoned places, she'd be the happiest human on Earth. Danica smiled sadly as the flakes of dust slowly settled, then took another step. There were 3 doors in the back of the building, 2 standing open and 1 closed. What could be behind them? An office? The toilet? Maybe some other small room harboring secrets? She felt the thrill of the unknown and quickened her steps. In the weak light falling into the abandoned building, more and more dust particles were now rising and forming clouds. It felt like shadows were filling the air around her as she made her way across the floor and toward the back. Danica felt cold as she finally reached the first door. It was only hanging from 1 hinge. The other had already rusted through long ago. She touched the metal door, heard it creaking, and stepped back as it began to vibrate. No, she definitely wouldn't try her luck here. In the worst case, this thing would fall on her, and then she'd be in trouble. Getting a signal in this building was a tall order, and no one knew where she was right now. So she would have to pray that someone might come by on their own. And judging by the state of this old factory, Danica didn't like her chances in that regard. She stepped back once more, watched dust rain down from the top of the door as it still softly vibrated, and then finally, thankfully, returned to its starting position, hanging silently from the hinge. Slowly, she raised her phone and took a few photos of the door. A death trap, she thought with a smile. The next time her boss chewed her out, she could look at this photo and remember the way she had felt at that moment. It would definitely help. Danica stepped away from the door, walked over to the second one, and looked at it more closely. This one seemed far less rusted through. It was standing open, at least a tiny bit, and was still safe and secure on both hinges. She reached out, touched the cold metal, then gave off a sigh as it didn't start to move from just a slight push. Grabbing it with both her hands, she braced herself against the wall, then started pushing it hard. With a loud, almost scream-like groan, the metal entrance started to move. Dust was raining down from its top and landing in her hair, but Danica didn't care at the moment. She could see almost complete darkness in the room behind, put her shoulder against the door, and finally felt the rust giving way and the entrance flying open. It hit the wall on the other side with a thud and pushed a giant cloud of dust into the air, but Danica was already protecting her mouth and nose from it as she stood in the open doorway, her phone as a flashlight in hand. The mass of particles blocked most of her light, which made the bit that did come through look like fingers grasping the darkness. It made her heart beat quicker as she watched. This whole building felt and had felt off since she had come here, but now in this room, she thought she had found something that perfectly fit her idea of what it meant to look abandoned. It wasn't just the dust and rust, but the atmosphere, the neglect and decay. The cloud slowly settled, giving way to the light from her phone, and in it, she could see the outline of a desk at the back, with an old crooked chair next to it. There was a filing cabinet in one of the corners, standing there silently, its grey paint flaking off and exposing the cheap metal beneath. How she would love to take something like that with her and put it into her apartment. But Danica knew that she couldn't do that. She had promised it to herself. Take nothing but photos, leave nothing but footprints. She always hated it when abandoned places were ransacked by other people. It took away most of the charm and mystery and turned a great spot with eerie vibes into something mundane and useless. She'd rather walk into some long-forgotten house with graffiti all over the walls than one without at least a modicum of furniture still standing. Danica took another step, letting her cone of light pass from one side to the next, then stopped for a moment. There was something on the desk, she now realized. Beneath the sheet of dust, she could see an outline. It was rectangular. Probably just trash. Part of her tried to dampen her spirits. No. Maybe it was something interesting. The whole building, while looking completely desolate, still seemed almost untouched by other people. There were still things in here that explorers normally would take with them as keepsakes. Danica reached the desk and carefully wiped away the sheet of dust. It rose into the air in a big cloud, but she didn't mind. What she could see in the cone of light of her phone was a pen, and next to it, a single sheet of paper. They weren't neatly arranged or put to the side, but right in the center. Someone had dropped them there, and that a long, long time ago, judging by the amount of dust in the air. Danica looked back the way she had come. Only her own footprints could be seen inside the room. No one had entered here in who knows how long. She felt this pleasant tingling sensation in the nape of her neck. Could it be that she really was the first person to come here in decades? Danica watched the dust settle, then turned back to the desk and suddenly froze. There was writing on the sheet of white paper. A sentence hurriedly scratched onto it. Don't let it out. Whoever had written those words had been in a panic. She could almost feel the author's fear in them. Danica took half a step back, then shook her head. Don't let what out? Whoever had written those words had been in a hurry. That much was clear. They had dropped the pen and paper, then probably ran off without looking back. Or maybe something had happened to them. What were they talking about? Danica looked around once more. There wasn't anything else that could give her a clue. The walls of the room were almost completely uncovered, raw and dirty. Dust covered the floor, but even there she couldn't see any signs of something happening. No black soot spots from a fire, no lingering smells. There were no scratch marks or anything like that around either. The factory must have produced something, right? But what? She didn't even know what its name had been or who the owner was. Danica walked back to the entrance of the room, raised her phone, and took a few pictures. In the bright flash of her light, the interior looked strange. There were dark edges around the borders, shadows that almost seemed alive. She couldn't help but shiver, then quickly took another step to get away from that door and room. Something about it freaked her out. Danica brushed the dust off her shoulders and hair, then walked over to the last of the 3 doors, the one she hadn't opened yet. Around her, the air seemed to grow cold as she moved closer to that entrance. It looked shut tightly, maybe even locked. In that case, she would turn around and leave, she promised herself. There was no way she would try to break into a locked room in an abandoned building. The number of things that could go wrong was astronomical. Danica reached the door, extended her hand, and grabbed the handle. The metal felt strange beneath her palm, cold and smooth, yet somehow almost wet. She bristled inside and tried to push it, then pull it, but the door didn't budge at all. A slight groan escaped her as she finally let go of the handle, then wiped her hand on her jacket. It was locked, just like she had feared. The words on the sheet of paper came back to her. Don't let it out. In that case, maybe it was better that the door stayed closed. If it were a warning meant for that room, she could have found herself in deep shit if she had opened it somehow. A sudden noise cut through the silence, and Danica felt a cold chill running down her back. It was a clicking sound, and it had come from right in front of her. She felt the shiver running through the floor as the door in front of her groaned, then popped open and swung outward at a leisurely pace. A gust of wind came through the now forming gap and blew the rest of the dust from her shoulders. Danica could smell something in the air. A strange odor that seemed so different from the other smells surrounding her right now. It wasn't musty or full of dust. Instead, it reminded her of oil, but was somehow astringent. She wrinkled her nose, then watched as the door moved again. Very slowly and eerily quiet. Danica could feel her heartbeat picking up. Don't let it out, the message on the piece of paper had said. No, this thing was moving on its own. The door was opening without her doing it. It couldn't have meant this room, right? Behind the now opened entrance, Danica could see nothing but darkness. Only this time, there was no cloud of dust accompanying the breeze. She raised her phone again and turned on the flashlight. Strangely, the darkness hardly moved. It looked almost like the cone of light was hitting a black wall and bouncing off, instead of penetrating any deeper. Another shiver ran through her. Part of her warned that whatever was behind that black wall could be dangerous, while another, louder voice inside her mind urged her to step forward. This was, after all, what she had been looking for. An adventure. Something to explore. Turning around now would be like denying the reason why she had started these explorations in the first place. Danica felt a bead of sweat running down the side of her face as she smirked, then shook her head, then took a step closer toward the threshold. The light of her phone still didn't manage to burrow through the strange darkness. An almost growl escaped her lips. The closer she got, the louder the voice warning her felt. Something was wrong here, it shouted in her mind. She had never before seen anything like that wall in her life. Even though a part of her wanted her to turn around, her curiosity moved her feet closer. She was only a step away from the threshold now. If she extended her hand, she could try to touch it. Danica felt her arms trembling as she approached the darkness further. This was it, she thought. Her first true mystery. She pushed herself forward, her fingers moved into the dark, and the sudden chill gripped her whole body. It moved from the tips of her fingers up her arms and through her chest as she finally walked into it fully, and for a split second, Danica felt like she was no longer even on Earth. There was no longer a floor beneath the soles of her shoes. She didn't know if she was breathing at all. Light seemed like a distant memory as she floated through what felt like never-ending darkness. The sensation made all the nerves inside her body go haywire. Was it cold? Hot? Where was up or down? Maybe she was falling. Panic spread through her mind, pushing all the thoughts away. What if she could never go back? Danica wanted to scream, then stopped as suddenly her foot touched hard ground again. She stumbled, the phone slipped from her grasp, and she found herself inside a room that was brightly lit by halogen bulbs mounted to the ceiling. She pulled herself together quickly, straightened her back, and looked around. The room in front of her was completely different from the rest of the abandoned building she had seen. There was no dust in here, no signs of neglect, and a strange smell permeated the air. Oil and something else she still couldn't quite put her finger on. Danica looked around the room. There were more desks against the walls, chairs toppled over, and filing cabinets. She could see 2 metal lockers on the back wall, and 3 fire extinguishers hanging from old-timey mounts. The wallpapers looked almost new, but their style was outdated with an intricate pattern shining in blue, grey, and white. And in the middle of the room, a single object was lying on a table. It was massive, green, and covered in grime and rust. The thing seemed to suck in all the warmth of this place as she looked closer. And Danica felt this nagging voice inside her head warning her already to stay away from it. That strange object reminded her of some kind of tank almost, with rounded edges, this dark green paint job, rust, and now, as she looked more closely, little oval windows on its side. Danica felt a chill, but her feet were moving already, carrying her forward first to her phone that had fallen onto the floor, then further into the room. Slowly, she rounded the object, but made sure to stay more than an arm's length away at all times. There was a name imprinted on its side. It was hard to make out at first, but as she got closer, she could clearly see the letters. Drinker Respirator, 1929. An iron lung. She had heard about those a few years back. It was a machine that helped people breathe. Another cold chill gripped her. What was this thing doing here? She let out a sharp hiss, then took a picture with her phone. Almost 100 years old, she thought. Danica tried to open the browser on her phone to Google it, but there was no kind of cell service in here. She cursed in her mind, shook her head, then looked more closely at the machine. There was no wire connecting it to any outlet. It was turned off, dead for the moment. Danica took another step, then stopped. She could see the front of the machine now. The hatch was closed and locked, and from its single hole, a head stuck out. Not a skull or skeleton, no, an almost alive-looking one. Danica wanted to scream as she saw it. She froze on the spot, unable to look away. Someone was in there. Had been for how long? She couldn't see the body moving or any reaction at all, for that matter. Danica felt her throat closing up as she walked around the front part of the iron lung. Lying in the machine was a woman, and a young one at that, but the body wasn't breathing and wasn't reacting to her presence. It reminded her of a funeral. The closed eyes, the calm expression. Could it be some kind of prop? A fake body? Danica put her phone away. Taking pictures right now just felt wrong. She took a step closer and extended her hand toward the dead face. The pale skin looked completely unblemished. There was no discoloration, no signs of death. This person must have died very recently. There were a million questions she had, but not a single one of them could be answered right now. Or was that one of those latex-skin dolls? She finally took a breath, reached out, and touched the woman's cheek. It felt warm. A shiver ran through Danica's body, followed by a wave of nausea as she realized that it was real. There was a dead person stuck in this iron lung, and she had touched it. Danica pulled her hand back, wiped it on her jacket, looked up again, and froze. The eyes of the dead body were open now. She was staring up at the ceiling. What was going on here? The corpse had moved. Danica turned around and looked back at the open door. The strange black wall was still in there, barring her sight. Should she run? The place she had stumbled upon was far too creepy.
Help me.
A soft voice mumbled, and its tone sent shivers down Danica's spine. She whirled around, looked, and now could see two eyes staring up at her. They were still a bit unfocused, darting back and forth, unable or unwilling to settle on her. The young woman was alive! Danica rushed over to her side, unsure of what to do. If it came down to it, she would have to leave her here for a moment, run out of the building to get a signal, then call for help. Are you okay? What happened? Her own voice sounded shrill in her ears. She could hear her panic and was sure the young woman would notice as well. The girl in the machine blinked slowly. Her lips were quivering.
Please, I got locked in here. Accidentally.
Danica touched her forehead. It felt ice cold. Was she another urban explorer? But how could she have gotten locked in a machine like that? Still, first she needed to get her out of there. Danica walked over to the side of the machine while looking for the mechanism to unlock the iron lung. Her eyes wandered along the flaky green paint. A sudden thought hit her. Don't let it out, the message had said. There was a sudden chill in the air as she thought about it. Her eyes fell on the small window showing the inside of the iron lung. She could see the young woman's body, the things she was wearing. A velour coat, and beneath it a knitted sweater. It looked strangely familiar and fit right in with the rest of the room. Danica stopped, then glanced back at the woman's head. She was blinking slowly and her jaw was moving. Something was definitely wrong with her, with the whole situation. When did you get locked in here? Danica could see the woman's eyes moving, then felt this tension in her chest as their gazes met. There was a coldness in her stare that she couldn't explain. The jaw that had been moving relentlessly stopped, and the voice that came out of the woman seemed stronger, more normal, as if she had just woken up fully.
A day ago, I think.
Danica felt the woman's gaze wandering up and down her body, taking in her outfit now as well. It felt strange, different. Her instinct screamed at her to step away from the machine. This part of her was now howling that she wasn't looking at a normal human right now, but something that only imitated one. "What year?" Danica asked, and the woman's eyes went wide for a moment. She could feel the seconds ticking by as the silence grew longer and louder. The woman looked like she was frantically trying to come up with the right answer.
43.
She asked in an unsure voice, and Danica stepped back from the machine. Something was definitely wrong with her, with this whole situation. She needed to leave, and maybe then she could call for help. This thing wasn't human. It had been locked in here for decades without dying, and now it had woken up. Danica turned, then stopped as the woman's voice reached her again.
Got caught already, huh?
The eyes on her were piercing. Her feet felt anchored to the floor, so Danica turned her head and looked at the one stuck in the machine. She didn't look hurt or scared anymore. There was a grin on her face.
You can't get out of here anymore either, you know. I won't let you.
Danica felt a chill, shook her head, but didn't reply. Her instincts warned her not to engage this being any longer. She turned and started to walk, then almost screamed as the lights above her flickered, before suddenly the only door of the room fell shut with a deafening bang. Gone was the darkness blocking the threshold, and instead she could see the closed door, locked just like before. Danica could feel her own heart racing as she looked around and finally landed on the woman's face, now grinning from ear to ear.
I won't let you leave until you let me out.
There was this coldness in her voice that made goosebumps break out all over Danica's body. The woman wasn't playing around. Danica tried to take a deep breath and calm her nerves. She walked over, across the room, and to the door. Her hand gripped the handle. She rattled it and then stepped back, imitating what she had done before to open the door from the other side. The entrance stayed closed. There was no clicking, no mechanism springing open. The only thing she could hear was the soft chuckle of the woman in the machine. Danica felt her hands trembling.
Told you.
The woman's voice said after a few seconds.
Let me out, and I will let you leave. Otherwise, you'll stay in here with me forever.
Danica looked back at the woman who was now grinning from ear to ear, making her face seem less human than before. It reminded her of a shark. There was no way this thing would let her leave, right? Her instincts were warning her again, but Danica knew that she had to do something to stop herself from dancing to this monster's tune. She walked over, grabbed one of the fire extinguishers from its mount, and raised the heavy object up so the woman in the machine could see it clearly. "If you don't let me out, I can make you," she threatened, which made the monster only chuckle again.
Silly girl. If I could be killed that easily, do you think they would have locked me in here? Come on, give it a try. Maybe you'll damage this thing enough so I can get out on my own. And you really don't want to know what will happen then.
Danica felt herself wavering. She lowered the heavy extinguisher a bit, but still took a step toward the iron lung. "I can still hurt you, even if you don't die. Let me out. This is your last warning." The face of the woman in the machine didn't show any sign of fear or distress. She was looking at her with this smirk on her lips.
Do your worst.
The cold voice told her, and Danica's hands started to tremble. Could she go through with it? No way. Even if the thing was lying, using a fire extinguisher to crush her head was unthinkable. This was madness. She set the object down, then looked at the thing in the machine. That goddamn smile made her skin crawl.
Good choice. Do you want to know what happened to the last guys who tried to hurt me?
Danica wanted to shake her head, but before she could, the light above her flickered again as this cold breeze blew through the room, and she heard the locker standing at the wall opening. Something rattled as it tumbled out. Danica didn't want to look, but her curiosity got the upper hand. Bones. Dozens of them were tumbling out of the lockers. There was clothing as well. Shirts, pants, shoes. Someone had stuffed them in there decades ago. And now that smell she had noticed before made sense. Oil and rot. She felt her legs turning to rubber. What was that thing? How did they manage to lock it in here? Was that black barrier meant to keep it hidden? Imprisoned? If she opened the iron lung and let it out, what would happen next? Would it go outside and kill more people? She could see the greed in this thing's eyes and felt a pang of guilt for even thinking about doing what it said. There was no way she could let it out. Danica let out a breath as her heart started racing. She would need to stay in here with it, right? Her eyes met the thing's, and immediately the smirk surrounding the woman's lips vanished. Could it read her thoughts? Or was it guessing? Whatever the case, the thing seemed angry now.
Let me out,
the voice ordered, but Danica shook her head. No, she replied. She could see the woman's face harden, her teeth sinking into her lower lip. Now she would see what this monster would do when it got angry, a voice inside her head warned. Danica couldn't help but shiver. The lights above her started to flicker, and she felt another ice-cold chill in the air.
Last chance.
She heard the thing's warning, but Danica stayed firm. In the flickering of the light, she could see the monster stop biting its lips before the smile returned. Now it looked completely manic. The halogen tubes above her suddenly died, and Danica found herself standing in utter darkness. She fumbled around for her phone and found it, but even as she touched a button on its side, the screen didn't turn on. Danica could hear her own heartbeat and heavy breathing. She was caught in here, in the darkness, with this thing. A breeze blew past her, cold, carrying the stench of the bones with it. Somewhere, someone was cackling.
You think you can stop me? Silly girl.
The voice mocked her. Danica bit her lip and closed her eyes. Her legs, no, her whole body was trembling. It's not real. She told herself to calm down, but all her instincts were screaming at her that she was in danger, that the thing locked in here with her could and would hurt her.
I have given you enough chances, but you didn't listen.
She could feel the breeze touching her face from the other side. In her mind's eye, she could see something standing behind her, playing with her hair.
I have been here so long. So very, very long. Do you know what that's like?
Danica didn't answer. She needed to calm down and get a weapon to defend herself with. Quickly, she grabbed hold of the fire extinguisher again. Her heart was beating so fast she could feel the blood rushing through her neck. It hurt.
I can come out of this machine any time I like,
the voice threatened, and now it sounded like it was coming from all around her.
You should have listened.
Danica almost screamed as the floor began vibrating. It was in the rhythm of her own frantic heartbeat. She turned around, unsure of where to look. The darkness surrounding her was all the same. Was she even still in the room? She raised her weapon, ready to strike. Somewhere around here, someone was walking.
Got you.
A voice hissed into her ear as something touched her shoulder. Danica screamed as she jumped, the heavy fire extinguisher still in her hands. She stumbled, crashed against a hard object, and then heard the sound of glass breaking. Loud laughter filled the air as something hissed, and a cold, smooth hand grabbed her wrist. She tried to struggle against it, but the next moment, the fire extinguisher fell from her grasp, as somewhere right next to it, a mechanism clicked. With a hiss, she felt the iron lung open, then got a shove that sent her back into the floor. The halogen tubes above flickered and came back to life. Danica wanted to scream again. There, in the cold light, she could see it. The iron lung was open, and out crawled something that looked almost human. Eyes were staring down at her as the thing slowly moved from its cage, stepped onto the floor, and then stretched its far too long arms and legs. Danica scrambled, but the thing grabbed her before she could get off the ground. Its strength was surprising. She tried to resist, but the monster lifted her up and dragged her over to the machine. Danica cried out as it shoved her inside roughly. She tried to free her arms and legs, but the monster pushed her in before it pulled down the hatch with a bang, locking her into the iron lung herself. What if the windows was broken? She needed to open it quickly. Danica tried to put her hand out and felt sharp shards of glass cutting into her skin. The thing now standing where she had stood before was laughing.
Good luck, but I don't think you can reach it.
The glee in the voice almost made her cry. She struggled, tried to get up a bit more to give her arm leeway, but immediately felt the cold metal blocking her. Footsteps moved away and toward the door. Danica growled, then screamed as her hand only touched the cold outside of the machine, but couldn't reach the mechanism.
You know, I really need you to stay in there just a little bit longer. Can't get out if there's no one in the machine.
Blood was running down her arm. She almost dislocated her shoulder, trying to get to the clasp. Danica didn't stop until the sound of a door opening suddenly made her freeze and look around. The figure was standing there by the black wall covering the threshold.
Have fun, silly girl.
The voice almost cackled. Danica screamed as she noticed the monster's hand resting on the wall next to the entrance. There was a switch there. She howled, then saw the thing grin oh so brightly, before it flicked off the light and plunged her back into complete darkness. Danica felt the pain spreading from her arm to her chest. She couldn't see anything anymore.
Goodbye,
it said, voice cold, before the bang of the door falling shut echoed back from the walls, leaving her alone, caught, and with only the sound of her racing heartbeat to keep her company.